Two of the most explosive players in the world of chess, Hikaru Nakamura and Parham Maghsoodloo, face off against each other in the 7th round of the Qatar Masters 2023. Parham opens the game with 1c4. Hikaru, the second seed of the tournament, has been playing very steady chess. He has had 3 wins and 3 draws, 4.5 out of 6. Parham had 1 loss in this tournament but has come back admirably. c4 e6 played by Hikaru. Maybe he wants to go for the Queen's Gambit decline, or who knows, for the Dutch defense. You never know with these players what they would go for. Parham plays his knight to c3. You can see from Parham's finger on the left hand that he recently got married, and the same is the case with Hikaru. So 2 recently weds facing off each other. cd taken. And now Hikaru takes back with the pawn as well. ed, and the pawn moves to d4. So we have the Carlsbad structure here. But Hikaru instantly breaks with c5, going for a very active opening. Knight comes out to f3, and now we are in kind of Tarash territory here. Knight f6. In fact, it's the Tarash. So g3 is one way to play here, which is the main line. But Parham goes for the sharp line with bishop g5. And Hikaru plays his bishop out to e6. Well, there are some very sharp lines with e4 here. Let's see what Parham does. He's played this before, but he plays a move a3, which he has never played before and has only been tried in 1 game. Pawn to c4 played by Hikaru after a long think. He's down to 1 hour 4 minutes. Parham takes on f6, also after quite some thought. So they are both clearly out of their preparation. And now Hikaru chops off the bishop with his queen. e4 seems like the most natural move to play here. But what does Parham do? Well, he goes queen a4 check. Very interesting. Queen a4 check has been played in the position, and the knight comes to d7. Now, here Hikaru has played his knight. Parham can go forward and he pins it. Whoa, that's a nice move. Now look at the pressure building up. And the threat could be knight takes pawn, bishop takes, and queen takes d7. Checkmate. That's a big threat, and Hikaru has to be careful here. The game has sharpened up right from move number 10. Rook d8. Fine move by Hikaru. a7 pawn is hanging, but really that pawn does not matter so much here. He goes e4. And here black has a very amazing move. He's hitting the center. Look at this move. Bishop c5. If you take, I take the knight. But Hikaru plays a6, and that is a mistake now. And Parham has an advantage. Let's see if he manages to sort of push here. Firstly, you can take the pawn on d5. And he does it. E takes d5 is played. So the bishop has to move. So it goes to f5. And now this is a great move, because if you play b5, I can take, and this is a very irritating pin with castle coming up. Will Parham take the pawn on c4? Well, he's thinking. Oh, he goes g4. Well, maybe the computer doesn't like it, but what a sharp move this is. Just g4, hitting the bishop, asking it where will it go, and Hikaru pushes the pawn to b5. Parham simply comes back with his queen, and the advantage is back in his hands, because the queen is now better placed. Where will the bishop go? Oh, he takes on e5, and his point is, if you take here, I want to take back and give you a check. So g takes f5 played. Clearly, you need to save your knight. But if you go back, it seems just too slow to play it that way. So Hikaru calculating here, down to 30 minutes on the clock. Parham has 36 minutes. He gives a check on d3. Well, that knight has to go. Parham chops it off. Pawn takes, and now you just take that pawn with queen takes d3. In the resulting position, you will see that white is 2 pawns up. Although his pawns are terribly doubled, like these are doubled isolated pawns, but they are still extra pawns. And so, really, Hikaru has to be very careful. He goes bishop e7, and I think Parham now can play rook g1. He can actually play knight e4. He plays his knight to e4. You can't take this pawn. There's a check and you lose the queen here. So that you can't do. You have to move the queen. And where does Hikaru go? He goes to b6. He plays his queen to b6. And now, what is the best move? Long castle seems like a great move. Rook c1, but he goes d6. Parham is like one strong move after another. He's like, now take this pawn, Hikaru. Well, Hikaru takes it, and what is the next blow on Parham's mind here? Oh, he goes f6. And guys, look at this. If you play g6, I go queen e3 and it's game over, because if you castle, I go queen h6, forced mate. So this is Parham's very devilish plan. But Hikaru finds bishop e5. What a classy move. He pins the pawn here, and you can't take the bishop. Your queen is hanging, and the bishop is threatening to take. And also, he's threatening to take on f6. So what does Parham do? Well, he takes on g7, and he wants to make a queen. So that pawn must be taken. Bishop takes g7, has to be played. And so he takes it, bishop g7. And now, white pawn is hanging here. You need to save it. He pushes forward, but that opens up the bishop's path to b2. Will Hikaru take that pawn? Is it safe? Because when you take wayward pawns, your king, which is in the center, can get under trouble. But also white's king is in the center. And right now Parham is a pawn up. Both of them playing such fiery chess here. Although we've just played 22 moves, the game has become so sharp, and that's the reason why both of them are down to 20 minutes on the clock. Hikaru there, he's confused whether he should take or not, because there are other possibilities as well. You can move your queen over, you can castle. Well, he takes it, and it's the best move in the position. And now Parham can bring his rook into the center with rook d1, or he can move his rook to the corner with rook a2. And he plays rook a2, and his point is he wants to perhaps bring the rook to e2 and attack here. And if the king castles, then bring the other rook to attack. In that way, all his pieces are working beautifully. Maybe it's prudent for Hikaru to go queen d4 and exchange off the queens. That seems like the best thing to do. But he goes bishop e5. Oh, can we go rook e2 now? Well, the problem is after rook e2, either queen d4 or king f8, just moving the queen away. He goes rook g1. He stops him from maybe at some point castling. Well, that is stopped for sure. And I think Hikaru, no matter how hard he wants to win here, has to remain careful about his king. He goes queen d4, and that is a good move, because now the queen trade cannot be avoided. It has to be traded. And on the other hand, the d5 pawn could become weak. So, Parham, is that endgame worse for him? Well, not really. He takes, bishop takes, and now how do you save it? He goes rook e2. Clearly taking this pawn has its risk. Knight f6, double check, and you lose the rook. So that cannot be played. What do you do here as black? You play king d7. Wow. He's played his king forward. And now, where does Parham next activate his pieces? For the time being, his pawn is safe. But long term, black has the advantage because of these two pawns here against one and the bishop against the knight. But Parham's pieces are very active. And so rook c8 played here. Is there some threat of a check here? Well, anyway, you can come out king d2. So it's not a big problem there. Parham can continue with his attacking moves that he has been making. And there you have it, another active move. Rook f5, attacking the pawn on f7. The rook comes to f8, defending that pawn. And maybe just knight f6 check. Is that a possibility, or do you go king d2 and start fighting for yourself as well? Well, Parham goes knight f6 check. And now Hikaru can avoid the trade with king d6. But he takes on f6. Rook takes on f6, and the a pawn is hanging. And so now with 14 minutes on the clock for Hikaru, 6 minutes for Parham, a5 played and offers a draw, and Parham instantly accepts it, and 30 moves have been completed. But what a fighting game of chess this was by both the players. The arbiter comes in very quickly and sees that what is the result of the game. The kings are placed on the center of the board, and they are analyzing. Parham says, let's go outside and analyze. Really, the game was so sharp and complex. In fact, Parham did miss some chances there for himself. Hikaru still in with a chance to win this tournament with 5 out of 7. And Parham, as always, a pleasure to watch him play chess.